Ramaphosa nokufonela. Uvotele mina.
Koalisiepolitiek is die toekoms vir politiek in Suid-Afrika.
Cool but not wet. We can sort out the drought afterwards.
Baie ongelukkig. Omdat ek dis teen my geloof om gemerk te word soos 'n dier. En nou maar as jy dit nie doen nie, mag jy nie stem nie.
Goeiemôre, welkom by ons eerste uitsending op die derde dag van
Cyril Ramaphosa nokufonela.
Pretoria Wes.
Uvotele mina.
Vanaand gaan ons 'n bietjie kyk na wat die toekoms nou van die twee belangrikste, grootste opposisiepartye in die land, die DA en die EFF. My naam is Gert van Westhuizen en saam met my is Roland Henwood, politieke ontleder by die Universiteit van Pretoria. Môre Roland.
Goeiemôre.
Dankie dat jy gekom het. And then we have Mr. Solly Malatsi, the DA's national spokesperson. Good morning, Solly. Thanks for coming to the show. Roland, kan ek by jou begin? Die DA het daar is nou so 76% van die stemme is nou verseker gecapture, soos hulle sê in Engels. En dit lyk of die DA so hier by die 21,75% staan op die oomblik. Gaan hulle beter vaar? Gaan dit in daai omgewing bly?
Ek dink dit gaan in daai omgewing bly. Dis moontlik dat die DA nog uit die groter Pretoria, Tshwane, Johannesburg omgewing dalk nog stemme kan bykry, maar daar's soveel stemme nou in dat ek dink ons die basiese patroon van hoe die verkiesing uitspeel gekry het.
So hulle dan basies swakker gevaar as in 2014.
Ja, ek dink marginaal swakker gevaar en nou die opnames voor die verkiesing het aangedui dat die DA swakker gaan vaar. So dis in lyn met die verwagting, maar ek dink hulle het beter gedoen as wat baie van die opnames aangedui het en so dis positief in daai konteks. Maar nie die groei gehad wat 'n politieke omgewing vir opposisiepartye gebied het nie. En ek dink dit is 'n belangrike aspek om wat 'n mens verder na moet kyk.
Solly, are you disappointed with the DA's performance in this election?
Look, I think we are content with the results. I mean, there's a context to this. We had a challenging year in 2018 and things looked bad for us in 2018 and we were able to regain the momentum towards the end of the year and even through the positive campaign that we ran. So where we are now is a reflection of how we've overcome some of the difficult chapters that we encountered last year. Of course, no one wants to lose votes. You know, in any election, you want to consistently keep the momentum of continuous growth as we have since the first election. But, you know, we also have to look at instances where we have grown as a potential positive aspect in particularly amongst rural black voters who wouldn't have voted for the party before. But like I said, you know, in this process, it is never a good thing to lose votes because we want to continue growing. But also we are in the politics of the long haul. We've got a vision of trying to build an organization that represents all South Africans, and I think in that process there might be those who, you know, jump ship, but the key thing is to unite South Africans behind this vehicle.
You refer to people that jumped ship. Do you think a lot of your traditional white voters went over to the Freedom Front Plus?
Look, I think that is one of the things that the results seem to be indicating, that there is fragmented segments of our voters or people who used to vote as previously who have shifted towards the Freedom Front in this particular election. However, I think what we also need to look at for ourselves is how do we make sure that in seeking growth, particularly in the majority of the population of the country, we continue to maintain the solid and integral relationship we have with white voters, colored voters and Indian voters, so that we can continue to grow and be a home that is representative of the aspirations of all South Africans.
Roland, waar jy nou vir die DA?
Ek dink die DA, die belangrike uitdaging vir die DA is en daar's 'n unieke konteks. Die DA is die mees diverse party in Suid-Afrika en ek dink tot 'n mate die DA konfronteer die werklikhede van Suid-Afrika intern. Die res van die partye eksternaliseer dit en het dan maniere om dit te doen. Die DA sit intern daarmee. En die pad vorentoe gaan bepaal word deur hoe hulle intern, want ek dink dit is die basiese probleem vir die DA. Is nie noodwendig aanvanklik gewees hoe hy sy veldtog voer nie, maar hoe hy intern homself bestuur. En daar's verwys na die uitdagings in die Wes-Kaap Die Good Party het definitief 'n groter invloed gehad dink ek as wat baie mense verwag het, maar ook ander alternatiewe soos die Vryheidsfront Plus. Ek dink die ander faktor is die DA sal moet 'n antwoord kry op president Ramaphosa. Dis 'n baie groot effek dink ek op die DA.
Ja, baie mense wys dit uit.
Ja, en dit het op sy wit en swart kiesers se invloed. Ek dink dis 'n ander realiteit. Die DA is nie uniek in dat hy die enigste een is wat hierdie opsies het nie. En daar is nie die ANC as sulks nie, maar die persoon van president Ramaphosa is waarskynlik 'n groot invloed gewees in hierdie verkiesing. En die vroeë aantekens wat ons sien in stemanalises is dat mense in baie dele wat DA stemme verdeel het tussen nasionaal en provinsiaal, en ek dink dis 'n faktor wat 'n mens na moet kyk. Maar dis 'n groot uitdaging. Op die stadium is die optrede van die DA en die posisionering van die DA moeilik, en daar is nie vir hulle 'n onmiddellike antwoord op daai spesifieke uitdaging.
Solly, where to now for the DA? Let me, it's the same question I asked Roland, but I would like to hear your view on that. Especially, he said that you find it difficult to find an alternative to President Cyril Ramaphosa. It was easier in the years when President Jacob Zuma ran the country, because you could attack him, you could provide an alternative to President Zuma, but now things are different. How do you see that playing out in future?
Look, I think what these results show is that we have to look at how we remain loyal to our values. And in doing so, how do we consistently appeal to our traditional voters who have carried us through all these successive elections while maintaining growth? I think it is possible. I think it is possible to solidify the traditional vote while continuing to grow amongst Indian voters, amongst colored voters, and amongst black voters. I think what we have is a unique offer. You see the rise of movements both on the right and on the left, and it's a global phenomenon of racial nationalism and populism growing.
Is it identity politics then, in a certain sense?
Yeah, I think it's undeniable that there's the rise of identity politics in South Africa, and going into this election, I think identity politics were at their peak.
Yes, and the DA tried to stay away from the identity politics idea.
Absolutely. Our vision is to stay in the middle, because we believe that, we're in the game, we're in this business for the long term. And as I said earlier, along the route there'll be difficult chapters, and these difficult chapters are opportunities for us to reflect on where we could have done better, but also being mindful of the fact that, in trying to adapt in this space where populism seems to be the easy route, we have to maintain what has kept us unique throughout this process, because where we are able to govern, we do so well, we do so ethically, and we do so in such a way that restores and gives South Africans hope that there's a possibility of a good governance. But I think when it comes to elections, that's where we need to look at how do we replicate that in appeal. Do we need far more greater engagements with our voters, even where we govern, so that there's no complacency. And these are opportunities. We look at these results, and not too many people, I think, look at the context of 2018. 2018 was a difficult year for the DA, in all honesty. And we did try our best to overcome that chapter. Some may argue that it was probably too little, too late to have a major impact. But as statistics show now, we are going to be around the 22% at most, or even get to 23, which will be an ideal circumstance. But what is encouraging is also the growth, as I indicated, in those demographics that it was unthinkable before. So this is an opportunity to align this and continue with our middle ground offer, because I think South Africans recognize that division is not what we need in our country, given the history of this country. So we need a message of hope, which we tried to do with building one South Africa for all. And I think going forward, beyond this election, that's where we've got to look at how do we consolidate that? How do we make our offer continuously attractive to our traditional voters?
Roland mentioned the fact that it's very difficult to be a party, to have one party for all South Africans. It's an extremely difficult challenge to overcome, and you are trying to do that. So in future election campaigns, shouldn't you concentrate more on what you have achieved in governance rather than attack the opposition?
Well, I think this is not a zero-sum game. I think in any election, you have to strike the right balance between advocating about your offer and also being able to robustly differentiate yourself from the other parties. And not be ashamed of doing that, because you have to distinguish yourself from the offers of other opposition parties, and then make the public to make its choice based on that. And it's a key element of electoral contest. In this one, I think more than anywhere in the past, we're able to be largely proactive about our message, excuse me, our message and our offer, and how we differentiate from the opposition part, from the other opposition parties. Of course there are lessons. There'll always be lessons.
What is the main lesson?
We are humble enough. I mean, one of the things that's emerging here is to take into consideration, to the extent to which a lot of analysts and people are talking about, and you have mentioned it now, their takes on opposition parties. And I don't personally believe at this stage that it was attacks per se. You gotta be able to differentiate yourself from the other opposition parties. But when all is done, we gotta look at how everything could have been more better, how everything could have been effective. And in there, I'm sure there will be lessons that we will then take going forward.
Roland, as jy nou kyk na die verkiesingsveld of van wat die DA gevoer het, wat het vir jou uitgestaan en wat het jou nie beïndruk daarvan nie?
Ek dink wat uitgestaan het was die manier hoe die DA 'n baie diverse en 'n komplekse situasie hanteer het. Maar ek dink iets wat ek sou, as ek die DA moes advies gee, is om baie meer te fokus op wat het hulle bereik, hoe suksesvol is hulle in regering, want hulle het baie kritiek daarop gekry en mense het nie regtig gesien dat dit daarop gereageer word nie. Nou nie 'n reaktiewe veld of nie, maar ek sou baie proaktief wees. Die DA het iets reg gekry wat niemand nog in Suid-Afrika reg gekry het in terme van hoe hulle regeer. Skoon audits, goeie regering, dienste word gelewer. Dis nie perfek nie, maar dis beter as in die meeste van die res van Suid-Afrika. En ek dink dis die tipe goed wat 'n mens moet baie meer gebruik en dan dis die basis waarop jy die res van jou boodskap bou. En ek dink ek sou dit gedoen het.
Now, talking about governance, the DA again won the Western Cape.
Yeah.
You also had to overcome quite a few challenges in the Western Cape. Did Patricia de Lille's good party took voters away from the DA?
I mean, if you look statistically, they're more likely to have a maximum of 2 seats in the provincial legislature. That would be their best performance. I mean, it's not a major dent, but like I said in the beginning, no party wants to see its seats or percentage being reduced, because the more seats you get, the more votes you get, the more momentum you have towards your program of governance. But I think in the Western Cape in particular, is what we are seeing is that the population in the Western Cape still have a high confidence in the DA's ability to run that province, because quite frankly, we are a shining example of service delivery, we are a shining example of good financial management and clean governance. And I think it is about time that we leverage that, and to the extent that there is greater voter engagement regarding our successes in government. 2 terms in government can often lead to complacency, and I think we need to look at ways that we galvanize ourselves in government, but also because you have to strike the balance again of doing government work, our senior political leaders being absorbed into government, and also doing organizational work, which is the constant engagement with communities, the constant engagement with interest groups, so that the organization is not swallowed by governance and there's little happening in communities. And that is something that we are constantly adapting to.
The relatively low voter turnout, I think it's in the region of 65%. Did that hurt the DA as well?
Well, at this stage, I don't have conclusive remarks to make on it. We'll have to look at what impact it has had. But if you look at the Western Cape, for instance, you can tell from the set that it didn't have much of an impact. But nationally, it may be a contributory factor. But I think also going forward, we need to look at the role of the youth vote.
Yes,
Even though we had a higher percentage of young people participating in the elections this year, the fact that there are still 9 million young people who could have voted, who didn't register, shows that there's a window of opportunity there. the challenge now becomes how do we then connect with those young people, given the dynamics that we know. And we think that we are probably the best hope for that population, given, even if you look at the leadership of the party and the people who are rising within the leadership levels of the party, and that's a window of opportunity that we'll need to look at robustly and explore.
Okay, one last question. I'm going to direct it to both you and Roland. And a short answer, please. Are you satisfied with the performance in the Western Cape?
Yes, yeah.
Moet hulle tevrede wees? Kan hulle tevrede wees daarmee? Kon hulle beter gedoen het?
Die aanduiding was dat die DA die Weskaap gaan verloor en hulle het dit met 'n redelike gemaklike meerderheid behou. So ja, ek sou tevrede wees.
Baie dankie Solly vir jou tyd. Thanks a lot for your time.
Baie
And
dankie.
thanks for coming on to the show. Ons is nou weer terug, dan sluit Bonolo Selebano, politieke verslaggewers van Netwerk 24 om by ons aan.
Netwerk 24 se spesiale verkiesingsgids is die plek om te wees as jy al die nuus en uitslae van minuut tot minuut in Afrikaans wil kry. Volg die regstreekse dekking en ontledings deur joernaliste landwyd en vanaf die nasionale uitslagsentrum. Interaktiewe kaarte wys die uitslae nasionaal vir elke provinsie, munisipaliteit en in jou stemdistrik. Vergelyk die uitslae en kieserstatistieke van die vorige 4 verkiesings om die grootste verskuiwings te sien. Maak seker jy het die jongste weergawe van die Netwerk 24 app. As jy na die spesiale verkiesingsafdeling wil gaan, klik deur van die spesiale skakel bo aan die tuisblad of in die hoofnavigasie-opsies op jou rekenaar en in die app. Volg dan al die nuus, regstreekse dekking, interaktiewe kaarte met uitslae, 'n oorsig oor politieke partye, video's en potsendings. Gaan na netwerk24.com vir al die verkiesingsaksie op een plek.
Uvotele mina.
Koalisiepolitiek is die toekoms vir politiek in Suid-Afrika.
Cool but not wet. We can sort out the drought afterwards.
Baie ongelukkig. Omdat ek dis teen my geloof om gemerkte lot soos 'n dier. En nou maar as jy dit nie doen nie, mag jy nie stem nie.
Welkom terug by ons regstreekse uitsending hier van die OVK se uitslagsentrum in Pretoria Wes. In die eerste deel van volgende uitsending het ons oor die DA se toekoms gesels. Van nou gaan ons bietjie kyk na die EFF en hoe hy gevaar het in die verkiesing en wat die toekoms vir hom inhou. Saam met my is weer Roland Henwood van die Universiteit van Pretoria, politieke ontleder, en Bonolo Selebano, politieke verslaggewer van Netwerk 24. Welkom Bonolo.
Good morning and thanks.
Roland, laat ek weer met jou begin. Kan die EFF tevrede voel met sy vertoning in hierdie verkiesing? Hy het van 6,35% gegroei tot die net oor die 10%.
Ek dink is 'n gemengde resultaat vir die EFF. Die positiewe, daar's groei en die EFF is een van min politieke partye, nuwe politieke partye in Suid-Afrika wat in 'n tweede verkiesing gegroei het. Die normale patroon is ja, hulle daal. So dis die positiewe. Die negatiewe is die aanduidings voor die verkiesing was 'n baie sterker groei en ek dink die EFF en hoe hulle posisioneer en gekommunikeer het, het baie duidelik laat verstaan, selfs dit is dalk 'n bietjie gering geskat, hulle verwag baie meer. So daar is positiewe, maar ek dink daar's baie sterk negatiewe elemente vir hulle.
Bonolo, what do you think of the EFF's performance in this election, seeing that they were, some pollsters said they would get around about 14% of the vote and they only got about 10.35%. What's your opinion of that?
Yes, the pre-election polls, did poll them at about 14%, but they've actually got around 10%. But this should be looked at in context. In 2014 they got 6.3%. They rose up to 10. So if I was an EFF supporter, or if you were to ask an EFF supporter, are you happy with the result? They would certainly agree that they are happy with the progress that they have made. But I think a discussion that is worth having is what are the contributing factors or the driving forces behind the EFF's growth? That's a question that I would ask.
Well, what do you think that is?
I think the EFF, or rather the black middle class, are tending to gravitate towards the EFF. And I just want to unpack this issue. I think both the ANC and the DA have alienated the black middle class, as in black professionals. Let's start with the ANC. If you can recall former President Zuma's characterization of black professionals who were critical of the ANC.
Yeah, clever
described
blacks,
them as clever blacks. That was alienating because there's a difference. The upward mobility for black professionals is starkly different from the upward mobility of the ANC's political elites. Upward mobility for black ANC political elites is centered around the proximity to political power, which manifests itself through catered deployment. Upward mobility for black professionals is centered around industry and talent. But the black middle class has grown angry, they've grown wary about the pace of economic transformation. The black middle class are dealing with issues of rising education, the rising cost of health as well, the rising living standards in South Africa as well. So they are sort of acutely affected by those issues. But
they are still a relatively small group, the black middle class. So will the EFF be able to broaden its base?
There's a major risk. The political elites in the EFF, one would describe them as champagne socialists. In other words, their lifestyles are quite different from the values that they preach in public.
Yes.
So the black middle class, which are now starting to gravitate towards the EFF, or rather the EFF has become a voice of the black middle class, but the EFF itself can alienate itself from the black middle class. But when we speak about the growth of the black middle class as well, is it sustainable under the current economic conditions that we have? Certainly things look bleak for the black middle class.
Roland, wat is jou mening daaroor? Het die EFF 'n plafon bereik? Kan hy sy groei, kan hy nog verder groei? Op watter tipe kiesers moet hy konsentreer? Die swart middelklas, die werkersklas?
Ek dink as ons gaan kyk na die konteks is belangrik. Dis 'n verkiesing weer eens wat aan opposisiepartye die ideale geleentheid gebied het om te groei. ANC is swak, regering is swak, daar's baie ontevredenheid en hulle kon nie regtig daarop bou nie. Nou dalk het die laarstempersentasie, maar dit het op almal dieselfde effek. So ek dink dit is vir my 'n belangrike vraag. As mens kyk na die pad vorentoe, as ons dit baseer op die verkiesingsuitslae, wat hierdie verkiesing vir ons wys is, 'n radikale linkse politiek gaan nie aanvaar word nie. En dan sit die EFF in 'n moeilike posisie. Waarheen groei hy? Hy kan nie verder links veel bereik nie. Nou moet hy begin dink, gaan hy in die ANC ingroei? Die aanduidings wat ons nou kry is as hy aan die ANC ingroei, moet hy bietjie meer gematig wees. Daar's natuurlik 'n sterk linkervleuel in die ANC, maar die vraag is hoeveel van daai vleuel is bereid om uit die ANC uit te gaan. En die bespiegelinge van 'n ANC verdeling na links en regs, ek dink is vroeg daar. Ek koop nie te veel in op dit nie. Sou die EFF bietjie na regs begin groei en te ver gaan, dan sluk die ANC om in. So hulle is in 'n baie moeilike posisie. En dan kom die beginselvraag uit en ek dink dis wat Bonolo na verwys. Die waardes wat jy predik teenoor die voorbeelde wat jy stel, al daai goed raak al hoe meer belangrik. En baie belangrik, die EFF leierskap het 'n baie sigbare lewe. Dis sosiale media gedrewe, dis baie hoë profiel. So daar's 'n paar moeilike keuses en harde probleme wat hanteer moet word in terme van die pad vorentoe. Ek dink wat baie duidelik is, die EFF het die maklike deel dalk gehad tot nou. Nou begin, en dis vergelykbaar met die DA. Die basis is daar, nou begin die moeilike deel vorentoe.
Roland just referred to the fact that the EFF is in quite a precarious position. How do they grow? Do they go further left? Do they go more to the right? If you look at other left-wing parties like the Social Revolutionary Workers' Party, it got about 17,300 votes. Is there a possibility of the EFF merging with those parties because they fish for votes in the same pond, and the pond is quite small? What would you say about that?
Definitely. I mean, if we look at the Socialist Revolutionary Workers' Party, it's a NUMSA-formed political party. NUMSA has about 370,000 members, but that does not reflect rather in the numbers that the party got in the polls. So certainly, I think one would suggest that some NUMSA members actually voted for the EFF. And the question is again, and we spoke about it yesterday, you know, why would a voter give their vote to a party that realistically does not have a chance of getting enough seats in parliament to drive the agenda that they want to see in the National Assembly? So I think workers gravitated towards the EFF. So I don't think the Socialist Revolutionary Workers' Party cut into the EFF's electoral base. I think it's the other way around.
Okay, so do you think there will be a possibility of any mergers in the future between those parties on the left?
It depends on the egos of their leaders. If Julius and Irvin Jim can sort of, liquidate their egos, there could be a possibility of a merger. But it just depends on the egos of their leaders. Ideologically, these two parties are ideologically aligned. It would make sense that for them to coalesce into some sort of a coalition. But it's dependent on the egos of their leaders.
Roland, ons het in die gesprek oor die DA, het jy daarna verwys dat die DA nie eintlik 'n alternatief vir president Cyril Ramaphosa het nie. Dieselfde geld natuurlik die EFF, en hulle van hulle begin van die ontstaan van die EFF het hulle groot kapitaal of wins gemaak uit die feit dat hulle teen president Jacob Zuma as toe hy verdwyn het, toe is dit asof hulle al van 'n no man's land beland het.
Ja, dis baie interessant. Die verhouding tussen Malema en Jacob Zuma is amper simbioties. Hulle het mekaar nodig gehad tot op 'n punt. En ook histories het hulle. Die interessante ding is dat met die leierskap van president Ramaphosa, hy het 'n manier om Malema te neutraliseer in die parlement en so, en hulle het nie antwoord op dit nie. Die ander ding, as 'n mens gaan kyk na die veldtogte wat gevoer is dit of die EFF skielik gesê het, maar hulle het nou Zuma vergewe. Hulle het 'n gemengde boodskap daar gestuur. Ek dink hulle onderskat hoe kwaad is mense oor wat gebeur, selfs in die EFF. En daai tipe van boodskap wat jy uitstuur kan dalk vir mense sê, maar wag 'n bietjie, jy's opportunisties. Maar dit gaan nie meer oor beginsels of oor die saak wat reg is nie. Kiesers kyk anders na hierdie goed as om net te sê dis net 'n rigting, dis net 'n opmerking wat jy maak. En ek dink dis van die goed wat die EFF sal na moet kyk, om altyd die boodskap suiwer oor te dra, gefokus oor te dra. Hulle het waarskynlik die beste kommunikasiestrategie gehad in die verkiesing. Selfs hulle het belangrike foute gemaak.
Wat sou jy sê is die belangrikste foute wat hulle gemaak het?
Ek dink die skielike verandering van ons het Zuma vergewe, ons kyk anders na die goed. En dan die manier hoe hulle styl verander het om by Ramaphosa aan te pas, sit hulle op die agtervoet. Want skielik lyk Ramaphosa net al hoe beter en sterker.
We were discussing the fact that the DA and the EFF, neither of them actually had an alternative to President Cyril Ramaphosa. It was quite much easier for them in the era of President Jacob Zuma because they could attack him the whole time and point out all the mistakes that were made under him. Now all of a sudden they had to fight Cyril Ramaphosa, and it's much more difficult because he's so charismatic and he's... what would you say to that? Do you think that detracted from the EFF in a way?
I think the election of Ramaphosa as ANC president at the 2017 NASREC conference was a critical driving factor behind the ANC's retention of its majority at the moment. The ANC is still in pole position, but with a diminished majority. But remember the pre-election poll suggested that the ANC would drop below 50% in Gauteng. But it seems as if now they're going to stay within that particular margin. And I think the personhood of Cyril Ramaphosa is certainly an important factor in galvanizing support for the ANC particularly in this particular electoral cycle. But, there's another issue that I would like to explore. Pundits have said that, of course, Cyril is an important factor, but you cannot separate Cyril from the ANC.
Yes.
The whole cannot be separated from its parts, and the parts cannot be separated from the whole. So a vote for Cyril, by extension, is a vote for the ANC top 6, which comprises of questionable characters such as Isma Hashule. And a vote for Ramaphosa as well, by extension, is a vote for the additional 80-member National Executive Committee, which also comprises of questionable characters.
Thanks a lot, guys. We have to conclude. Maybe one last question with a very short answer from both of you. Ralph Matekga, the political analyst, yesterday wrote that both the opposition parties, the DA and the EFF, fared dismally. Would you agree? A short one.
Fared dismally. I tend to differ with Ralph. The ANC is in pole position, but with a reduced majority. The DA is second place, but with a slightly reduced margin compared to 2014. But the EFF is looking better, than the DA, because they grew from 6% to 10%. And we didn't discuss about this, but the unsuspecting success story for this electoral cycle has been the rise of the Freedom Front Plus.
Yes. We haven't discussed that, but maybe in the next broadcast. Roland, jou kort antwoord op daai.
Ek dink die woord dismally is dalk baie sterk. Dis moeilike omstandighede vir al die partye gewees. Die dalende kiesersgetal is vir my 'n kernpunt. Wat is die boodskap wat dit aan politieke partye gee? Is dat die tweede grootste groep mense in Suid-Afrika is die wat buite die politiek gestaan het. Hulle sê iets vir die politieke partye kollektief. Die klomp jong mense wat nie gestem het nie. Dis 'n groot pool van mense. Hulle is besig om iets te kommunikeer aan politieke partye en daai is die belangrike vraag vir die toekoms.
Ja, en ons hoop die politieke partye luister. Baie dankie Bonolo en Roland for being here. Ons is later vandag weer terug. Hou ons gerus dop.
Netwerk 24 se spesiale verkiesingsgids is die plek om te wees as jy al die nuus en uitslae van minuut tot minuut in Afrikaans wil kry. Volg die regstreekse dekking en ontledings deur joernaliste landwyd en vanaf die nasionale uitslagsentrum. Interaktiewe kaarte wys die uitslae nasionaal vir elke provinsie, munisipaliteit en in jou stemdistrik. Vergelyk die uitslae en kieserstatistieke van die vorige 4 verkiesings om die grootste verskuiwings te sien. Maak seker jy het die jongste weergawe van die Netwerk 24 app. As jy na die spesiale verkiesingsafdeling wil gaan, klik deur van die spesiale skakel bo aan die tuisblad of in die hoofnavigasieopsies op jou rekenaar en in die app. Volg dan al die nuus, regstreekse dekking, interaktiewe kaarte met uitslae, 'n oorsig oor politieke partye, video's en potsendings. Gaan na netwerk24.com vir al die verkiesings